Hello everyone, thank you so much for joining me today. So the subject for today, as in the description, things like resilience, staying focused on our goals, planning for the future, and generally, staying on track in terms of where we want to go, where we want to be. So this live stream, again, is a part of this longer series on Schema Therapy. So I'm using the framework from Schema Therapy to help me to structure this live streams, these presentations, and hopefully help you to understand yourself better. So in terms of personal development, I think Schema Therapy can be very helpful because very often we don't know what to change about ourselves, how to resolve certain conflicts, like do I improve certain thing about myself, or do I just accept it, let it be, and focus on something else? So I think with Schema Therapy, using that Schema Therapy can be very helpful because it helps us to kind of narrow things down. So what might be the issue? So in today's live stream, to help me with narrowing things down, hopefully help you as well, I'm going to be focusing on two major schemas related to our ability or not ability to meet goals, to stay persistent and stay resilient in terms of challenges and basically achieving our goals. These two schemas are entitlement and insufficient limits. So I'm going to go into the schemas later on. But first of all, I'm wondering what brings you to this live stream today? Like what sort of challenging are you facing in your life in regards to this subject? Because I guess if you're in this live stream, there's something that you want to work on, something that maybe you find difficult in your life. So again, we're going to be working on things like resilience, staying focused, persistence, getting disciplined, getting to that level of self-control instead of, kind of compulsive or obsessive, indulgent, let's say. So what sort of challenges are you facing personally? Because that, by answering this question, you can actually structure this live stream. You can have some control over the direction of this live stream. And of course, you can work on your own personal goals. Hi, Clockwork. Hi, Cappy. Hi, Baron. Nice to see you all here. So while I'm waiting for your answers, hopefully there will be answers. Please don't be shy because, the more you participate in these discussions, the more you can get out of this live streams. So underneath all these schemas, in regards to, as today, for example, in regards to like discipline and self-control, the idea is that we all need this kind of maybe structure or limits in our life, that the kind of fundamental human need is to be able to face challenges, to have some level of control over ourselves, our environment, maybe other people as well. So basically what happens with the schemas, either entitlement or insufficient limits, is that we cannot fully meet these needs. We're trying, and in some ways we're probably meeting these needs, but generally, when we have either entitlement or insufficient limits, or a little bit of both maybe, what ends up happening is that maybe we create more of an appearance that everything is fine, rather than having that fulfillment and satisfaction from meeting our goals. We might be striving towards goals that are not really meaningful to us, right? We might be struggling with self-control, or just generally feeling like life is not as meaningful as it could be, because we're having this kind of maybe beliefs surrounding success or limits or discipline. Like maybe we want to rebel against the limits. Maybe we want to rebel against discipline. No, like we don't want to follow structure. We want to be free and stuff like that. So I'm getting some messages from Baron. So I asked the question, what sort of challenges are you facing? So basically, what brings you to this live stream today? What sort of things you want to work on? And the messages I'm getting is from Baron: boredom and impulsivity, compulsive thoughts. I can't pronounce this word. I'm not a native English speaker. Unsustainability, almost. So yeah, this kind of mental states like boredom, impulsivity, right, or not being able to persevere with our goals, they could be related to the schemas. So again, I'm not here to diagnose you and tell you like, okay, you have this schema and you need a therapy, or there's something major wrong with you, or nothing like that. Basically, I'm using the schemas to narrow the problems down, to understand the obstacles that we might be facing, right? Because then it's easier to change little things about ourselves and our behaviors. So things like, boredom, impulsivity, I think actually boredom and impulsivity are kind of related, because with impulsivity, in my opinion, and it's actually part of this schemas I will be discussing, with impulsivity, there might be something that drives us towards like stimulation, like we want to get that stimulated experience. We need to get certain experiences. We need to feel like we are alive or something is happening, right? We need to feel in a particular way. And also with impulsivity, I think the kind of major drive as well could be that we want the instant pleasure right now. So not later. We don't care about the later. It's better to feel feel that pleasure right now rather than later. With boredom is when we probably can't get that stimulation, right? So what happens from my perspective, and again, there are many different perspectives on boredom, but I think with boredom, it's like we can't fully grasp the kind of stimulating parts of our experiences. So like everything is maybe dull, we don't know what to focus on, which might be kind of related to not having long-term goals, not being committed to our goals, not seeing the bigger picture, not finding our life meaningful. So all these little things can be indication that we struggle with, that self-discipline or getting things done or being resilient. And I think the kind of heart of this live stream, in my opinion at least, that's what I'm trying to create, is this resilience to setbacks and challenges. So with resilience, what is resilience, right? Resilience is basically being able to kind of maybe stand your ground when things are not working out, right? Being able to face challenges as they are instead of avoiding them. Being able to stay perhaps in uncomfortable space for a while, frustrating space, where we feel like maybe things are not going the way we want them to go, but instead of avoiding these challenges, instead of avoiding certain mental states, we kind of persist, and we are able to kind of bounce out from setbacks. So someone who is resilient is a person who, they experienced some adversity, something that is not working in their life. Maybe they lost something, or simply they encountered a challenge, or they failed at the project or a goal, but they are able to go back on track. So obviously we see here a pattern, because someone who is resilient versus someone who is not resilient, the difference here is that, the resilient person will be able to move consistently towards their goals. And the reason for that is because when they experience setbacks or challenges, they are not giving up. They're not saying like, I can't do it anymore, or this is too difficult, or it's pointless. But they're like, that's what happened to me. I'm having a bad experience, maybe. I'm having maybe, negative experience, unpleasant experience. It's frustrating, it's sad. But I'm going to go back on track and keep working on my goal, because I have that goal in mind. I know what I want, and I'm going to go after it. So it's all that with resilience, it's all about kind of recovery of your kind of baseline skills, baseline mood, baseline capability to face life. So the quicker you recover, the quicker you bounce back from challenges, right? The quicker you can go back to working towards the goal that you've been working on before. Rob says, I'm realizing my biggest issue with control and planning is uncertainty about what to settle on, down to the minute of your plan for the day. So yeah, so this is kind of, I guess it kind of relates to prioritizing. So maybe you have many different ideas about what you want, where you want to be, but there's not maybe no bigger version, or not prioritizing. Well, we'll keep breaking it down. So what happens is that when we lack that resilience, in my opinion, when we end up, failing at something or encountering something, that takes more effort than we planned, we're going to be, giving up, feeling frustrated, like, I don't want to deal with this anymore. And that's what kind of drives this maybe cycle of impulsivity, boredom, avoidance of challenges, and not being able to meet your goals. So each time you face challenge, or you face a difficulty, or experience some unpleasant feelings or emotions in regards to your goal, or a person, or a situation you are in, each time you try to avoid it and say, like, okay, I don't want to deal with it anymore, you're contributing towards not having a resilience. So basically, when we have these challenges, when we meet failure, we have that choice. We have a choice of, okay, I failed, that's too difficult for me, I'm having these difficult feelings or emotions. I can either stay with these feelings, process them, understand the challenge and the situation I'm in, or I can avoid them and go back to hedonism and chasing little pleasures, or going after very simple goals and not really moving forward in life. Because when we avoid these challenges, obviously, we cannot really grow and expand or move forward, because we'll be stuck in our kind of metaphorical comfort zone. So again, I think the resilience is at the heart of all that. But going back to schemas, and as I introduced on the beginning of the videos, of this video, or live stream rather, the two major schemas that might prevent us from maybe being resilient and meeting our goals and having that discipline are the entitlement or insufficient limit, actually related to impulsivity. So with entitlement, I know that the word itself, we probably all associate it with things like narcissism, or someone who is maybe selfish or very opportunistic and exploits other people, which certainly might be the case with this schema, maladaptive schema. But I think with entitlement, obviously it's a spectrum, just like anything else within psychology. It is a spectrum. So on this higher end, yeah, that might be someone very narcissistic and demanding and wanting always things only for themselves and feeling like they deserve everything. But on the milder end of the spectrum, the lower end, I think with entitlement, it could be little things like wanting to always have it easy, or always wanting to be in that good state, for example, or believing that we have it easier than other people, that we don't have to work as much as other people, for example, or that we are immune to suffering or pain, right? So with entitlement, it could be any of these little things, but generally, that the more high on that spectrum you are, right, the more prevalent that schema will be in your life. And depending on that severity, it could be this little things, or it could be this huge grandiosity. But generally, this schema and this sort of associated beliefs and behaviors that come from childhood, where we probably were super protected, maybe a little bit spoiled, maybe being a single child, not being things were given freely to us or easily. So we learned that, okay, I don't have to put as much effort because things will just come to me, right? I certainly think that might be the case also with, even if you had like, healthy childhood, let's say. But certainly I think something like, being maybe kind of smart and then not putting much effort at school, right? Because you are smart, so you don't have to study as much, could also be kind of related to this entitlement rate later on, because you think like, okay, I don't really have to put any effort. Things are very easy for me, right? So later on in adulthood, you might see that, oh, actually things are not that easy, but unconsciously you expect them to be, right? Because of your past experiences. So this sort of things like, maybe not having that demands or responsibility coming from your parents could contribute to that entitlement schema. And generally the way it manifests, it might be things like in adulthood, if you do identify with this schema, and people with this entitlement schemas, could be something like not putting much effort. Like if something is too difficult, it's not worth pursuing, right? Again, kind of relating to resilience. Or you might be kind of passive aggressive in regards to other people. So like if they don't give you what you want or what you demand or what you need, you might start treating them kind of poorly. So it's all about having that belief that maybe you don't have to work hard anymore or ever, right? People owe you something, or that you are allowed to break certain rules or exploit other people. So again, it's a spectrum. Very often, we know about this schema through this extreme cases of narcissism, but we all have it within us. We all have, probably that part of ourselves that just, feels that we might be better than other people, or that we want to have it easy. We deserve to have it easy, that things are free in the universe and stuff like that. So obviously with this schema, what happens with the entitlement is that, you're not going to be challenging yourself as much unless it kind of maybe helps you with the status or provides you confirms your entitlement basically, or superiority. You might also, kind of feel like things will just come to you. I think very quite common thing might be also like magical thinking. Like if you do this small little like rituals or little habits, then things are just going to magically align for yourself. So this sort of little things. But also depending how you cope with this sense of entitlement, perhaps you have beliefs kind of contrary to that, where you try to push away that entitlement. So you think that, focusing on yourself is wrong, selfishness is, absolutely wrong, and that you have to work hard, maybe even harder than other people. So, it could be like, and completely opposite to that, depending how you deal with the schema. So I think conditions like codependency, for example, could be a manifestation of repressing that entitlement, where, as someone codependent, you might feel like, yeah, other people deserve more than me. I don't deserve, right? Life is way harder than me than for other people. So that's something to consider too, like depending on, how that schema plays out in your life, how aware you are of this process, right? And how you cope with this underlying feelings of entitlement, right? Because it depends on the belief. You might have a belief that, yeah, it's right, of course I'm entitled, so I'm going to pursue my demands and exploiting the various situations. But you might also repress it. Your moral compass might be completely opposite, and you might say like, yeah, it's super wrong to focus on myself, right? I'm not entitled to anything. I cannot make any demands. I cannot ask for help, because that would put me in this, entitled or demanding or privileged position. So just quickly reading the comments. Yeah, by the way, when you're asking questions in the chat box, I forgot to mention, but for those of you who are maybe the first time, can you use my name, highlight the name so I can be sure which message is directed to me, because I can see there's some discussions going on. Charles asks, can entitled people change? Yeah, that's a tough one. Yeah, there is generally an idea in psychology and in therapy. So if you take an example of someone who's like super entitled, right, or feels very entitled, so someone with, in terms of that spectrum of how much of that schema affects that person's life, if they are completely at the very end, right, they will usually not seek things like, you know, change or improvement, or that there's something wrong with them. They might look for, like, you know, personal development, especially if you know, there are associated beliefs about like superiority or wanting status. But generally it's kind of difficult to convince these people to change because they are entitled, they are superior to everyone else, right? So why should they change? But I personally believe that yes, they can change, but they need to see the consequences first of what is happening, what their behaviors are really getting in them into. So things like they need to realize that, for example, they're not having a real fulfillment in their life, right? The relationships perhaps suffer because they're completely removed from, you know, the human exchange, you know, the give and take, because they are always taking, right? So I believe, yes, they can change, but they need to realize the consequences first of what they are doing to themselves and to other people. So hopefully that kind of answers the question. A question. I find it hard to ask, I should have put my glasses. I find it hard to ask others for help or delegate at work. Any tips getting more comfortable with it? So just a quick tip would be to maybe stay on this live stream, because it sounds like it might be kind of related to this entitlement life trap or schema. So again, depending how you cope with the schema, right? If you do repress it, if your beliefs around your entitlement, your worth as a human being are kind of negative, then yes, you might have problems with asking for help or delegating. So something to work with. Now, the second schema I wanted to talk about is the insufficient limits. So with insufficient limits, what happens is that someone with this schema, especially if it's, you know, like really intense in your life or in your personality, is with the insufficient limits, you usually give up very easily because you don't have that discipline or self-control, right? You might avoid challenges altogether because you don't even know how to tackle them, right? Or you might even develop, again, this overcompensation, just like with entitlement. You might become like super rigid and controlling, so having everything in your life absolutely under your control. So there's no space for novelty, no space for a little bit of chaos or creativity, because you need to have that control, because you believe that maybe you don't have the sufficient discipline. So you will be like very on track with you know, routines and self-control, and trying to be that kind of perfect person who has everything under control. So again, coming back to a childhood, it usually comes from families who are like very chaotic. There were no discipline, no limits for the child, right? The child was free to do whatever they want to do. They were never taught about responsibilities or striving or pushing through challenges, but generally they were just left on their own. So as a child growing up in this environment, you're going to come up with the beliefs that, okay, you don't know how to face challenges, things are too difficult. If you face a challenge, you're just going to abandon and avoid it very quickly because you don't know how to do it. So with this schema, in my opinion, it all comes down to simple knowledge and practice with challenges. It's not about creating super structured environment or working on becoming that super perfectly controlled person, but it's more about learning how to face challenges. So how to persist with things, how to tame your impulsivity, how to delay gratification and stuff like that. So again, depending how you cope with the schema, how you cope with that kind of maybe chaotic environment as a child, right? You might be either, very impulsive, easily bored, not knowing how to face challenges, quitting it easily, or you might be compensating for that fear of losing control or fear of not having limits, fear of something terrible maybe coming your way, things like this. So if you have everything under control, you will be very rigid. And it's not about just the control of the external environment, but also your own. So you might be controlling your feelings, you might be controlling what sort of person you are, right? So it all kind of depends on what sort of conclusions, what sort of response you have to this schema. This schema is called, AJ, Insufficient Limit. So both of the schemas are kind of, again, coming from this environment where maybe there is not enough guidance from your parents, no accountability, no direction, no structure, right? So the child is free to do whatever they want, or they keep getting things very easily from their parents. So generally, we want to reverse it, right? Depending on which schema you identify with more, and it takes some, honest self-evaluation. Regardless which one you are identifying with, again, I don't know, I may be a little bit obsessed with it, but I think it all comes down to resilience. So what sort of things we could be resilient to that would help us with maintaining direction in our life, meeting our goals, persisting towards, things that are important for us, things that are meaningful to us, right? How can we persist with our habits that are good for us? So, good self-care routines and stuff like that. So I think in terms of the resilience, if we kind of analyze a person who is maybe not as much resilient, so someone who quits easily, someone who doesn't persist with their goals, why are they not persisting? Why are they not pursuing things? So I think there could be a couple of options at least. One of them would be let's say when you are learning something or when you are creating something, right? You need to stay focused. You need to pay attention, right? You need to persist. You need to put some effort. That generally, at least on the beginning and probably throughout the process, will generate some frustration, especially for someone who is not good with self-discipline. So the first thing you will usually notice when you try to do something, when you try to be disciplined, is the frustration, like underlying discomfort, like I don't want to do it. Like I would rather do something funny, something fun, something pleasant right now, instead of indulging myself in the state of frustration, right? So if we flip it, then the solution is to become more resilient to frustration, right? Another option is maybe feelings of shame or insecurity when we fail, when we think that what we are doing is pointless or stupid, or that we cannot do it. That maybe we pretend that we can, but we can't really, right? So all these doubts, questioning our self-esteem, our capabilities, these sorts of things are also huge obstacles to having that self-control and persistence in goals and developing good habits in our life. And when you're resilient to that, right? Okay, there might be some doubts, there might be some, some questioning your abilities or skills or what sort of person you are, right? But with resilience, you are switching the focus back to the goal that you're doing, or a task, or an ideal, whatever you are striving towards. So it sounds like with the resilience, it's all about kind of staying focused on what is important, what you are accountable for or to. So if you set a goal, for example, I want to maybe exercise 15 minutes per day, right? You set a time, you set a timer, for example, or a reminder. When the time comes, what happens in that moment, right? It's usually either doubts or frustration or boredom. Either of those. So generally just some discomfort. So with resilience, basically, you're withstanding these challenges. You ignore them, you stay on the task. So it's a little bit like maybe even like kind of developing that inner strength. How can we strengthen our resilience, Louis asks. That's where I'm getting into. Charles asks or says, maybe it's just in some people's nature to be more or less resilient. Yeah, there is a debate in psychology that at least some part of the resilience is kind of inbuilt. So like maybe it's temperamental, maybe the way we are wired, maybe, it's just something we are born with. But at the same time, there are ways to work on the resilience part as well. So it's something that you can improve, right? And actually, some of the interesting research on that subject is about how trauma for some people can produce that resilience. So as they come out from traumatic events, they actually become stronger. So there's still investigations about it, but things that they discover about people who become more resilient after trauma versus people who don't, is that the first group of people, the ones that become more resilient and grow from adverse situations or experiences, are those people who use things like reframing. They process, they take time to understand what happened to them. They reframe things, right? They develop a sense of control over what they can do. And also there's this huge element of self-compassion and kindness and taking time, right, for processing feelings, for understanding feelings, not avoidance, not giving up, but actually staying with the experience, staying with the feelings. So I think I can't remember the name of the studies, but if you type in Google, probably like study on resilience, or better, study on post-traumatic growth, that will give you lots of clues on what helps to develop that resilience, how to bounce back from challenges or adverse effects. So I think generally the major, I know it's going to sound like a cliche, but the major way to accept, the major aspect of resilience to accept, the major aspect of being, disciplined and working on self-control and meeting our goals is the fact that, it's a cliche, no pain, no gain. So basically we need to be able to increase our ability to stay with frustration, boredom, discomfort, pain, sadness, shame, anxiety, stress, whatever that is, right? So nothing comes for free. There's no easy solutions. There's no magic pill. I certainly don't have it. Maybe someone else does, but I don't think the one like that exists. But, you know, life is, that there's nothing free in life generally. The amount of effort we put, the amount of energy we put out there is the amount we're going to get back. Maybe sometimes more, maybe sometimes less, but generally it usually evens out, right? If you put an effort when wanting to lose weight, right, you can expect good results. If you don't put an effort, right, if you avoid pain, if you avoid challenges, you can, you know, obviously expect disappointments, but it doesn't mean you cannot go back on track. So basically, what kind of, you know, determines someone's success is not how smart they are or what they do or what their habits are or how much money they have, but it's all about continuously coming back to their goal. So they fail, and they fail 1,000 times. That's the you know, the whole nature of discipline and success. It's not like you know, you're completely immune to failure or you avoid failure, but you know, you fail and then you repeat what you've been doing. You stay focused on your task and you do it again and again and again. So there is no realistic, at least, method to avoid pain or to avoid discomfort or to avoid frustration. So the question is, how do we deal with that? How do we develop that resilience to challenging situations or to failures or to things that are too difficult for us? So one of the exercises I could suggest is to basically, you know, start pushing these levels slowly. So don't expect that, okay, I'm going to do A, B, and C, and I'm going to be more resilient. That's it. Or I'm going to avoid all the challenges, or I'll be able to face all challenges. That's not how it works. It's a step-by-step process. You push the limits slowly, so it's gradual. It's not like you are, you know, jumping in straight away into something very challenging. Although you might try doing that, but it's going to be uncomfortable. So how do we push this limit? One of the exercises I could suggest is making a list of things that you find, for example, frustrating or boring. So what are the most frustrating or boring tasks or goals or responsibilities that you need to do but maybe avoid doing or struggle to do? I would make a list of that. And then next to each option, basically rate each option, each item on your list in terms of level of frustration or discomfort or boredom, right? So on a scale of 1 to 10, how frustrating that activity it is for you, how uncomfortable it's for you, and follow the same, you know, the same method for the rest of the items on the list. So you're going to have a list of items which are of various discomfort, of various frustrations, right? Organize the list and start tackling tasks that are the least frustrating first, the least uncomfortable. So start with tasks that, you know, might be a little bit boring, might be a little bit frustrating, right? So instead of avoiding them, just make it a goal that you're developing resilience, that you are developing this discipline, developing self-control, right? That's your meta goal. And then just stay focused on that goal. So when you're working on these tasks, the goal is to develop resilience. So to do that, you need to be able to push through discomfort, through pain, through frustration, whatever that is for you. It's, you know, everyone is different and we all have these different experiences. So what happens is that you start with the easiest tasks and then you build tolerance for higher and higher levels of frustrations. So just a little positive encouragement, it is getting easier, because it's not like, you know, you're going to be experiencing this higher and higher levels of frustration, But actually what's going to start happening is like the more you do it, the less frustrating the task will actually become, because you're tolerating more, and then eventually you're going to stop paying attention even to whether it's frustrating or boring or too difficult or too challenging. You're just going to, okay, boom, I'm going to go and do it. So it's all about starting gradually. Don't tackle tasks that basically are huge or too difficult or too challenging. So when you look at them, it's like, there's no way, like, this is boring, I don't want to do it, I just want to play video games all day. Don't tackle these tasks first. Start with very small things. And it doesn't matter how small the thing is. That's an important thing too. Like, you need to be able to take credit for the achievements. Even if it's a small thing that you've done, praise yourself. Take a note. Okay, I've done it, right? It was frustrating, it was difficult to start, but I did it. So it's very important to basically take credit for these little achievements, little steps that you are taking, because it's not about the outcome. There will not arrive like a day for you where you are like, all right, I'm resilient, that's it, I reached my goal. No, it's about the journey. You're pushing and pushing and pushing, and you're slowly increasing this limit of what you can tolerate, how much frustration, how much boredom you can take, right? So with boredom, the same thing. With boredom, we usually are like, we can't focus on anything, right? What happens in that moment? What really happens when you are really bored? Because I personally think there is an opportunity for finding peace in boredom, which I'm going to go into in a minute. Thank you so much, Rob. Thank you so much, Rob. Okay, so is it possible to find peace in boredom? So what is boredom? Boredom generally is this, a state, as I said. It's not focusing on anything in particular. Nothing seems stimulating, right? Everything is kind of flat and dull. So that's the method I personally used in the past. When I'm bored, contrary to what many people might say, they might tell you like, oh yeah, do something, go for a walk, stay active, focus, or whatever. Contrary to that, what I've been doing in the past that helped me a lot, and I'm still using it, is I just sit with my boredom. All right, I'm bored, and I do nothing, because apparently that's what my body wants to do. That's why I'm bored, right? And that's where the real magic happens, because the moment I accept this state, the moment I become mindful of it, and I work with it, I stay with it, I become mindful, how does it feel to be bored, what is happening in that moment. That's where the magic happens, because then I'll start paying attention to something, right? Then I relax into this experience I am having. Then I can actually relax, because I'm not pressuring myself to focus on something or to be entertained or to work on something or to achieve something, but I stay in that space. I allow myself to be bored. So I invite you to experiment with this method a little bit and see what comes up. Can you really sit and just do nothing and accept your boredom? Because usually that's where we start getting, for example, creative ideas as well. That's where we start realizing, oh yeah, actually that's what I would be interested in doing right now, right? So there is this potential for finding peace and kind of serenity and tranquility in this bored state. It's all about not fighting it, not struggling, not pushing yourself, right? So very often people would just shame you for being bored or tell you are lazy or something like that. But that's actually not helpful. You need basically just relax into this state and accept it and stay with it, not distracting yourself, not looking for another thing to stimulate you, but actually just relax within this state. So how does it relate to resilience, for example? Well, that's another thing you're building your resilience with. Because if you can't stay bored, if you can't sit for 10 minutes, for 15 minutes, or for half an hour doing nothing, but just enjoying your boredom, then you can really face worse things than that, because you're staying with the discomfort, right? You're tolerating the initial discomfort. But then as you're doing that, as you're relaxing into this experience, you're actually gaining control over it, by the way. So that's something to think about. And that's what building your resilience, as you are able to tolerate the discomfort. But I guess, I suppose, like, regardless of the method, regardless of what you are working on, it's all about this kind of first decision that you make, right? Because we especially if you're impulsive, for example, you go from one thing to another, right? Just distract myself, just, do something, right? Just keep stimulating myself. Look for games, look for a TV show, like, just whatever that is. And with this, I guess it's kind of hard to build resilience, because you're distracting yourself. You're not controlling your attention, you're not controlling, you're being on autopilot. So the moment you relax into the experience, that's where you're gaining your control. Rob says, sounds like meditation. It kind of is. Yeah, you could escalate it to meditation once you're getting familiar with that experience of just sitting and being mindful and relaxing into the experience. So it's all about that first decision that you are making to do or to not do something. It's that moment where you cognitively might feel that, okay, I have to complete that task, for example, or I need to do that task, or complete the project, or I need to clean my house, whatever that is. Or I remember Joanna was saying about relaxing into boredom, but I really can't take this, right? You first usually recognize on the cognitive, logical level what is going on. And then usually what happens is that kind of emotional battle, like, oh yeah, but I don't want to, I don't feel like, I'm bored, I will do it later, right? So all these kind of emotional evaluations are, basically popping out. That's what happens in that crucial moment before you make a decision to either commit to something or stay focused on something, or complete a task, whatever that is. And that's what you need to be really mindful of, because the easiest option is to go with, my feelings. I don't want to do it, I'm not going to do it. Or why should I do it now? I can do it later, right? That's the easiest, because it's natural. That's what you've been probably doing for a very long time. But the key here is to, again, apply this mindfulness of, okay, that conflict is going on, but this time I'm going to do something differently. I'm going to go in a different direction, and I'm actually going to complete the task, or at least I'm going to give it a try and see what happens. And each time you do it, even if you just become mindful of that, that minute before making a decision of what's happening, that's a huge step, right? Like, again, I could break it down even more. So you become mindful of the conflict, you become mindful of the potential discomfort and wanting the easy way out. That's already giving you a way forward. Why? Because next time it happens, you're going to recognize it quicker. Okay, this conflict again, this experience again, right? And then it will happen again and again. And with mindfulness, you start to create this detachment from this automatic way of doing things, of avoiding things or avoiding challenges. And that helps you to start changing things, because then you can make more informed decisions. And there will be one day when you'll be like, you know what, I'm not going to go with this automatic way of living anymore. I'm going to persist with my task. I'm going to stay with my boredom, or the discomfort or frustration, or I'm going to look at my list of things I need to do. So it all kind of starts with mindfulness and awareness of what is happening in the moment. It's not about searching for some, big things like what prevents you from completing a task, what makes you lazy, or what makes you bored, whatever that is. That's certainly helpful because it helps you to recognize patterns. But it's not about doing then anything about this, ideas and cognitive things. It's all about taking action right now. And the action right now you can take is being mindful of what is happening. And take a note of it, understanding. See the pattern, see what is happening in that moment. And my last kind of tip on working with resilience and becoming more disciplined and developing that self-control is coming to terms and accepting the fact that nothing is really free in this world, that very often you need sacrifice. You need to sacrifice something right now to have something better in the future. Like very often people might say like, oh yeah, I want to be disciplined. I want to get more exercise. I want to stay focused on my tasks for longer or complete my projects and stuff like that. But I also want to keep watching Netflix all the time or, play video games. And that's fine. That is doable. But can you have limited time during the day. So you need to be able to sacrifice some time. And I think with time, it's the easiest sacrifice you can make once you start prioritizing and developing that vision for yourself. So something to consider as well, like even when with this exercise of tackling frustrating or boring or uncomfortable tasks, right? There is a little sacrifice in that too, right? You're sacrificing the immediate pleasure of not being frustrated or not being bored. You sacrifice it for a little bit of frustration now, which then leads you to fulfillment and satisfaction and seeing the results in the external life and feeling like you have more control over yourself and over your environment. So that's something to reflect on, I guess, personally. Like, are there little things that you can sacrifice right now? What sort of things you don't want to sacrifice? How much can you sacrifice? What can you give right now or give away? I think an exercise here kind of useful is think a little bit more about your future self. So if you keep doing what you're doing right now, will your future self be happy or healthy, satisfied, fulfilled? Is that the kind of future self you want to be? So that's something, probably to keep thinking about. So when you do these sacrifices, when you do these little things that, are uncomfortable now, but will have a payoff later, you're investing into that future self. You're investing into that person you're gonna become if you keep persisting with these goals. So that would be my final tip. So I guess with working with the schemas, working with, boredom or impulsivity or lacking in control, it's all about, moderation, slowing down, paying attention, mindfulness, right? And tackling tasks that are least frustrating or least uncomfortable for you first, and then taking small steps towards building greater resilience. And of course, taking credit for no matter how small the achievement, it is still an achievement and it's still pushing you forward. So I hope you guys found it helpful. Do you have any questions, or is this something you want to share before I go? Chat looks very quiet. I hope it's working. Let's see. All right, I guess that's it. So in the meantime, if you have more questions or if you'd like to work with me, you're welcome to either leave a comment underneath the video, send me a direct email. You can find that on my website, or contact me through social media. If you do enjoy my content, if you find it valuable, I do invite you to join me on Patreon. So that's by becoming my patron. You will get access to my Aspire group on Discord, which is full of resources, tools, discussions. You know, it will give you a space to connect with like-minded people. So you can do that on through Patreon. So thank you, AJ. Thank you so much. All right, it's been nice connecting with you as usual, and I will see you for the next live stream on Schema Therapy, where I'll be using other schemas to kind of maybe dissect our problems and obstacles. And I'll see you next time in 2 weeks.